Hello and welcome. Welcome to you if you are watching live. Welcome if you're watching the replay. Welcome if you are listening to this as a podcast everywhere where podcast streams. I am so glad you're here. I've been so excited to launch this project. This is the first ever episode of Leading Through Change, which is going to be recorded as a live podcast because I want it to be an experience that we all get to share together in real time and then can go into, streaming history. And I want to name something from the start, which is that this podcast, this program, this experience is different from what I think that we are used to. It's going to be different, and you're going to experience that today. So this isn't about service level leadership. It never is with me. It really is about soul level leadership. And what we explore here is going to go beyond tips and tactics. It's about how you become the kind of leader that the world is desperately asking for right now, and that we all have the capacity to truly step into and become, to lead the change, hence the name of this podcast, that we want to see in the world. And yet, sometimes it can feel very daunting, or sometimes it can feel like we don't know where to begin. That is the purpose of this podcast. So this is a space for leaders who are ready to lead from clarity rather than control, and from truth rather than fear. And it's interesting because today, our first episode is going to dive into fear and how it's the costliest risk for leaders, for organizations, and for our world. Each week, I'm going to take a principle from our Crisis Ready certification and bring it here, not just to teach it, but to translate it into something that you can live, you can lead, and you can embody. Because when more of us learn to lead through change with integrity, with clarity, and with coherence, we build a better world. And that is why I'm here. That is my mission as a human being on this planet. So it's not just about information. This is an invitation to feel what we talk about in your system and to begin to lead from that place. Because what we're going to do each week is not just share information from an intellectual standpoint, which we're always going to kick off with, but we're going to experience the information from a somatic standpoint as well, which means in your body, in your nervous system. Because that way, it's not just about conceptualizing from an intellectual standpoint, it's about really taking the information, having it land in your system, and beginning to utilize what we talk about from an intellectual standpoint right away. So it actually builds upon and amplifies the learnings, the takeaways. So this is where leadership shifts from resistance to resonance. So today we're talking about fear isn't the problem, unawareness is. And I want to begin by stating a very real truth, which is change is here, right? Change is happening all around us. It has been, I'm going to say it has been since COVID, since 2020. It can feel like we have been in the midst of constant shifts and constant changes coming from almost every single angle over the last 5 and almost a half years. We have everything from political shifts, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Canada, wherever you are in the world, there's political shifts happening that are creating ripple effects and creating shifts and change and disruption and uncertainty. We've got, as a result of that, we've got government restructures, right, that are having an impact, that are creating disruption, that are creating uncertainty, which means that they are creating fear. We also have corporate restructures due to the government restructures and in other cases due to things like technological upheavals, right? AI is changing the game. And while AI, as an example, is super exciting, I, for one, am crazy excited about AI, it's also new and different and is a big change that we're experiencing and that we will continue to experience, which means it comes with uncertainty, which then triggers fear. And we have environmental catastrophes, right? So we have severe weather that is increasing all around the world. And we have other regions in the world that never used to have experienced things like severe weather, whether it's hurricanes or tornadoes or wildfires, that are now beginning to experience that. So there's a lot of shifts that we are in the midst of because there's a lot of change. And one of the things that we know is true, one of the best quotes, and I am so sorry if I don't say this word correctly, this person's name correctly, Heraclitus, I think. I always can never say it properly, I feel. Heraclitus, we're going to go with that, and if anybody wants to correct me, please do, said, "The only constant in life is change." So while we're in the midst of all of these shifts and all of this change that's coming at us from so many different angles, change is the one thing in life that we can count on because evolution is constant. Change is constant. It's the one thing that we can always, always, always predict that we're going to experience change. With change comes uncertainty. And if we're being very honest, uncertainty can feel overwhelming, even for leaders. Right? One of the things that I learned very early on in COVID was I watched world leaders and I sat at so many different tables globally as leaders needed to make decisions. And even leaders, even the top most prominent leaders, were looking for other leaders to tell them what to do because nobody had the answers. So even leaders need leaders because when we get into realms of uncertainty, when we get into realms of change, it's very overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming. In that way, in that case, it's very easy to slip into reactivity, trying to control, right? When we feel like we have no control, then what does our system do? It wants to control things to give us a sense of stability, to allow our nervous system to feel like we're safe in some way because so many unknowns make us feel unsafe from a nervous system standpoint. And then this creates the fact that oftentimes we watch as people, as leaders, as organizations, as countries, wait for clarity before taking action. Meanwhile, when we're talking about leading through change, whether we're talking about crisis management or simply some wild change that's happening in our organization, in our communities, in our worlds, leaders who are leading through change can't wait for clarity before taking action. Because what do we know to be true? The crisis-ready rules state that the longer we take to effectively manage a crisis or a moment of change means that the more ownership of the narrative you're going to lose, the more trust and credibility you're going to destroy, and the more material impact you're going to suffer. So it's a leader's responsibility when leading through change to find a way to gain clarity even amidst the shifts, even amidst the uncertainty. And this can be extremely challenging to do, and I want to explore why that is today, because this is really, really important. So there are a few things that we're going to go down kind of a pattern or a stream of thought to bring, hopefully, awareness or new perspective into fear, change, and leading through change. The first thing when it comes to change, when it comes to shifts, when it comes to uncertainty, the ego doesn't like it. The ego does not like change. And before we go any further, I need to describe or define what I mean by the ego. And the ego is something that moving forward in this podcast, in this program, I'm going to talk about the ego a lot because the ego is our humanness. And so let's define it right here, right now, so that we understand together that it is not, when I talk about ego, I'm not talking about pride. I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about narcissism. I am talking about the self-identity. So as per the Britannica Dictionary, the ego is defined as that portion of the human personality which is experienced as the self or the I and is in contact with the external world through perception. Perception is consciousness, is awareness. So from a psychoanalytical standpoint, the ego in Latin actually means I. So every single time that I'm talking about ego, I am talking about our individuality as human beings. I'm talking about our self-identity. So for example, my ego is Melissa Agnes. Melissa Agnes is who I am in this world, in this body. I am a blonde. I am 5'10". I have hazel green eyes. I have these likes and these dislikes and these hopes and these aspirations and these fears and these insecurities. That is all a part of my identity, which is my ego. We cannot be a human in this world without our ego. So ego is not inherently whatsoever a bad thing. Okay, so I kind of want to set the tone for that. Now, the ego's job is to keep us alive, right? So me, the individuality of Melissa Agnes, wants to stay alive. I want to stay in this world. I want to stay breathing. I want to stay healthy. My ego's job is not just to create an individuality so that I can experience the world through my own perspectives and perception and personalized experiences. My ego's job is to make sure that I'm allowed to do that. So therefore, its job is to keep me alive and to keep me safe. Now, the challenge with the ego is that it cannot discern between what is dangerous and might actually create the risk of me not being safe or me no longer being alive, and what is simply different, what is simply new and uncomfortable because it's a new experience. So the ego can't discern between danger and discomfort because something is new, even when that something new is going to lend towards our growth and our evolution. So if there's something that I have never experienced, right, and it is filled with opportunity for me, but it is something completely outside of my comfort zone because I've never experienced it before, my ego's job is to go, I don't trust that. That thing, that new thing, that change, that shift, that uncertain thing, we don't know. Or I don't know, my ego doesn't know if I'm going to be able to keep you alive when you go there. What I do know is that you're alive right now. So the ego's job is to keep us safe without being able to discern. So, which means that there presents a lot of risk in terms of that thing that I want to try or that I want to do that I know is so good for me. I now, as a human being, have to work through the resistance that I feel in order to get there because my ego is going to do its job and try to hold me back, to hold me here, to keep me safe. Okay, so because of this, the equation that we're looking at here is we can't be human without our ego. Our ego is a really beautiful thing. It allows us to experience the world through our individuality. However, anything that is new, anything that is change, makes the ego uncomfortable because its role is to keep you alive. So that creates fear in the system because the fear, fight, flight, freeze, is the nervous system's reaction to keep you alive, right? So ego sees change, creates fear. Here's what we know about fear. And this is the topic of our conversation today. Fear, as per Brené Brown's work in Atlas of the Heart, with which if you are a crisis communicator, if you are a leader who needs to lead through change, Atlas of the Heart is a phenomenal resource for so many reasons. I'm going to reference Brené Brown's body of work in that book often in our conversations because the world needed that work. We, as leaders who are leading through change and leading through chaos and leading through uncertainty and leading through crisis, needed that body of work. So fear, as per that body of work, says fear is a negative, short-lasting, high-alert emotion in response to a perceived threat. And like anxiety, it can be measured as a state or a trait. And that last piece of the definition is that some people are more prone to to being in states of fear, like more regularly. It's a little bit a part of their identity, at least for the moment, versus others are less prone to fear, so it's more circumstantial. But here, fear is a negative, short-lasting, high-alert emotion in response to a perceived threat. So what we know about fear. As per that definition, fear arises when we need to respond quickly to a physical or a perceived danger that is present and imminent. And the thing to recognize, so importantly, within that is that the threat, going back to the ego, can be real. There's a fire there. I need to go to safety. I need to protect myself and get away from the danger, right? It can also be a perceived threat that is only in our minds, is only in our imagination, is only in our belief systems or taking place in our mind, and it's creating fear. And even if that thing that we're perceiving as a threat, even if that thing isn't true, the feeling of the fear that comes from the perception is very real. It is a very real experience. So one, the reason I want to emphasize this is because we need to understand and be able to give compassion both to ourselves and to others that we're leading through change. So as a leader, if there's change happening, and change can come from crisis, right? It can come from all different places. If there's change happening, that means that people who you need to lead through the change, ego, change, fear, they're experiencing fear. As the leader, if you go, yeah, but that fear isn't real. You've got nothing to be scared of. That's not going to resonate with them because while you may know that truth, they do not, and their system is activated. Fear is so present, is so real in their system. So we need to be able to recognize that for what it is. And what it is the ego trying to keep them safe, right? It's just so natural. The other thing that we truly need to realize, and this is where the risk comes in. Fear is such a rapid-fire emotion that the psychological reaction can occur before the person consciously realizes that they're afraid. That is big. So, ego, job to keep us safe. Something changes, something's new, something's uncertain, triggers fear in our system. That fear happens so fast because that's how our body has been designed to keep us alive, that it jumps to the forefront of our being. We're going to go into this in a second. And it happens so quickly that the majority of humans on this planet, when that happens, don't even consciously realize that in that moment, they are in fact in fear. And that means that they're making decisions that are fear-based rather than optimal creation-based. When I think about this, when I know this, I look around the world and I look at different decisions that are being made on so many different scales, right? So for companies, for organizations, for communities, for countries, for the world. And I constantly play this game with myself and I seek to understand where the decisions are coming from. And my first question that I go to is that leader, is that organization, is that decision maker making a decision out of fear without even having this conscious awareness that they're actually in a state of fear? And I'm going to tell you that the majority of the time, in my experience, if I ask the question, the answer is yes. If something in me has triggered to go, let me ask this question, let me play this little game, the answer typically is yes, because we haven't been taught about this. And it's so natural. It's so intrinsic, right? For all the reasons that we've already just lined up. As a result, fear is the costliest risk of all. As a leader, as an organization, as a country, as a community, at Crisis Ready Institute, we teach organizations to identify what we call their high-risk scenarios. Their high-risk scenarios are their most likely high-impact scenarios that their organization is vulnerable or susceptible to. And every organization, every human being has high-risk scenarios. Every relationship has high-risk scenarios. It's just natural. Fear is never on that list. And I want to change that. Because if we're going to lead through change, we absolutely need to understand what fear is, why it is, how it happens, and how to get out of it so that we can make clear, visionary decisions, even amidst change and chaos and uncertainty. So if we look a little bit briefly at the costs of fear, fear creates poor decision-making. Fear clouds judgment, leading to choices that cause more harm than good. It creates short-sightedness. Leaders who operate from fear react instead of strategizing, making problems worse in the long run. It's not strategic. Fear, being in a fear mindset or having fear in the driver's seat and you don't even realize it, is not the optimal position to be making decisions from for the longevity and the long-term success of yourself, of your family, of your profession, of your organization, of your brand, etc. Fear can create paralysis, right? Fight, flight, freeze. Fear makes you freeze when action is needed most, leaving opportunities and solutions on the table. Fear creates resistance. When we go back to that scenario that I painted at the beginning, where I talked about how something new is happening and it's a great opportunity, but it's new, so my nervous system, my body, my ego is going, we don't think that that's safe. We don't know. We can't trust that. We don't. It's going to create resistance because the ego's job is to keep you here where it knows that it keeps you alive, even if here in this place isn't the best place for you. So that resistance is so real and really important. We're going to talk a lot about resistance in this podcast. It creates avoidance. So instead of facing challenges head on, fear drives leaders to ignore, to downplay, to delay, often until it's too late, leaving opportunities on the table, right? It creates blame and deflection. And ultimately, when we're making decisions out of fear, we lose trust, which is the most valuable commodity in relationships, in business, in brand equity. And fear creates a fear spiral. So fear breeds more fear. Why? Because it's the way that we're wired, right? The ego goes, that's not safe, right? And then it becomes this contagious effect that we don't want to lead from. That's not the optimal, that is not visionary leadership. So the more you lead from fear, the more it spreads, escalates, and traps you in this cycle of reactivity where now you're just constantly making poor decisions. If you are with me, if you're understanding that fear, what fear is, where it comes from, how natural it is, and how, if you can see how it is the costliest risk for leadership and for leading through change, which is why this is the first episode. Okay, the next piece that I want to go into is the last piece of this kind of explanation of what fear is and why it's the costliest risk. Fear puts you in survival mode, which makes sense, right? The ego is saying, that's unsafe because I don't know what it is and I don't know that I can keep you alive there. So I'm going to trigger fear to create resistance and keep you in survival mode because we need to stay alive. Fear puts you in survival mode. And here's the thing. You cannot be in survival mode and in creation mode at the same time. So all of those things that we just talked about, all of those costs of fear, when you're in survival mode, when fear is in the driver's seat without your conscious awareness, or when you feel stuck there, you cannot be in creation. You cannot be in optimal thinking. You cannot be in innovation. You can't. Physically, it is impossible. And we're going to look at why. So the science of this, because I had somebody go, but is it impossible though? Is that really true? It really is. Because here, this is why. Survival mode, which is stress. It's fear-based. It creates you're in reactivity. You are in probability. We're going to do an episode all on probability versus possibility leadership in the coming weeks. But for now, it keeps you in probability, which means that it keeps you in the same cycles that we're currently in rather than innovation. Because fear triggers the amygdala. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline, which is the stress hormones. And when that happens, this shuts down your prefrontal cortex. So once your prefrontal cortex is shut down, you can no longer think strategically. You have no access to bigger picture vision, which we need for our crisis, for our leadership, for our visionary leadership, and for leading through change. And you are solely just in survival instincts. You are reactive. This leads to risk aversion, right? Being risk averse. It leads to fear-driven decisions that create separateness and risk, escalating problems rather than solving them in new, optimal, innovative ways to create a better future. Because what are we doing? We're talking about leading through change. So that's what happens when ego sees something new. So when change happens, when shifts happen, when you're faced with uncertainty, triggers fear, puts you in survival mode, shuts down your prefrontal cortex, keeps you in survival mode. And most people don't even consciously realize that this is happening, and they're making decisions from this place. Let's look at what creation mode is, because you can't be in both at the same time. So creation mode gives you access to clarity, to insight, to wisdom, to divine guidance, which creates innovation and puts you into possibility leadership, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm so psyched to talk about this in a later episode. So when you're in creation mode, this now, instead of your prefrontal cortex being shut down, it's actually engaged. This means that problem solving, innovative thinking, and creativity is able to happen. You have access to those things. It activates, this is so powerful, it activates heart coherence, allowing you to stay calm and regulated, right? So you stay in creation and out of survival. And get this, the beautiful thing about our heart coherence is that it is infectious in a really good way. When you're in coherence, others who are in states of fear, whose nervous systems are dysregulated because they're in survival mode, when you show up as the leader in coherence, you actually transmit an electromagnetic field from your heart that calms their nervous system, which says what? It tells them on an unconscious somatic level that they are safe when they were otherwise in fear. So now they're in fear, and you show up as the leader who's leading them through change in coherence. And this actually has an impact on their nervous system where they go, all of a sudden, whew, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling safe. This person, this leader, has a presence. They have something that's making me feel calmer. I want to lean in. I want to follow them. I want to trust them. So when you choose to get out of fear, out of survival mode, and into creation mode, it doesn't just serve your leadership for you. It serves everybody you are leading through the change with access to innovative, visionary thinking. When we're in survival mode, there's so many opportunities that are missed and lost. We can see that. That's clear. We've talked about that. And so it's not fear itself that is the problem, right? Fear is natural. Fear is going to happen naturally when change occurs. We looked at that. So fear is not the problem. Staying stuck in fear is the problem. Staying stuck in survival mode, especially unconsciously. We cannot change the world and make the world a better place if we're in survival mode. And here's a stat. The majority of people on this planet are in survival mode and high stress, so therefore survival mode, 70% of the time. That's wild. And that's real. And that's very, very consequential and negatively impactful. And you get to lead differently. So if you've ever felt resistance to change, or if fear has ever made you hesitate instead of lead boldly, you are so not alone. That is so human. Every single leader struggles with this at some point or at some points in their life. However, very few ever truly break free from this, which means that there is so much opportunity for you because change is a constant. And change means that we're constantly going to be met with resistance and met with fear and met with, not wanting to move forward. This means that the world currently, because there's so much change that's happening, the world currently is craving leaders who can help them feel safe from that nervous system standpoint and have the clarity of vision to create from and lead from possibility and creation. Most leaders on our planet today have not been taught how to do this. They don't even have an awareness that this is even a thing, which means that those who do master this incredible skill that you all have access to, that we all have access to, will rise faster and further because people are craving it and because most people are too scared. Because why? We know why now. And I do want to say this. You don't need to have leader in your title. You don't have to have crisis communicator in your title. Leadership is not about rank. It's not about hierarchy. It's not about titles. It's about impact. And I promise you that when you start practicing this, the impact that you have goes beyond cognitive understanding. It goes to a felt sense that people don't understand what's going on, but automatically they feel safe with you and they trust you. And that's what we want as leaders who are leading through change. So this gives you a tremendous opportunity right here, right now, to rise into this because the world needs it. And so the question is, will you rise into it? Would you like to rise into it? Would you like to learn how to rise into it? So how do we do that? Where do we begin? As with everything, it always starts within you. Because you can't fight fear with fear. You can't fight fear with fear. We already saw that creates a losing spiral. So if you're in fear, you can't lead others through the change or through their fear. You have to find a way to get out of survival and into creation. And that's what we're going to talk about briefly and then experience together. So the first step in getting out of survival and into creation is to first and foremost understand and recognize fear as one of the costliest risks or high-risk scenarios for your leadership, for your organization, for your community, and for the world. So everything that we just talked about, if it's making sense to you, if you're sitting there going, yeah, I get it, then you have the first step down. You now have a deeper, wider awareness to a big reality that's happening in our world right now that most people don't yet have. So kudos. That's the first step. The second step is to learn how to recognize fear within yourself. So fear has a distinct signature that is unique to each of us. We need to, as leaders who are leading through change, we need to recognize, to train ourselves, to teach ourselves to be very, very familiar with that distinct signature. Because why? Because fear is so fast acting that the second your nervous system goes into fear, it takes over. And as we all have already seen, majority of people don't realize when that happens. So if it happens so quickly, how do we put ourselves in a position where we can be aware, have awareness that the fact that it's happening and get out of it? The awareness comes when we are familiar with the signature of fear. So maybe for you, it's physical. Maybe when you're in a state of fear, your palms start to feel sweaty. Maybe when you're in a state of fear, your heart rate starts to accelerate or your shoulders start to ache, and get crampy. Maybe you feel a really strong pull to run away. I've felt that before. That's real. Where everything in your body is going, run, run, run. And you're like, nope, I'm safe. It's okay. I'm going to stay here. Right? That's real. Maybe it's a voice in your head. For me, it's a voice in my head. It's a voice that sits right at the top left corner of my head, outside of my body. And it has a very distinct voice because it starts rattling off all of the reasons why I shouldn't do something or all of the risks that could exist in this moment. So I've learned to recognize that to the point that I can be in a position, leadership position within my organization, with my clients, whatever, or the state of the world, and I could think that I'm in creation mode. I can think that I am in my best, most optimal brain. And then that voice comes online. And even though I think that I'm in the most optimal, I'm in creation, I hear that voice and I go, oh, no, there's something about my system that's in fear right now. I need to stop and I need to get out of that. I need to get out of survival and into creation. So when we become really familiar with this voice or with this signal, it's a voice for me, it could be a physical signal to you, that enables us to stop, to have awareness, to stop and to choose differently. So that's the second step. And that is part of the homework that I'm going to leave you guys with this week is how do you start to get acquainted with this signal of fear? It's not about judging it. It's not about judging yourself. Fear is so natural. It's so inherently a part of how we are created, how are human as humans. So it's not about judging it or shaming it or feeling like it shouldn't be. It's about having the awareness that it is and choosing differently. And then the third piece of this is how do you choose differently? How do you step out of fear, step out of survival, and into creation? The answer here is by dropping into your body and getting out of your structured analytical mind. Because why? Because fear lives in the mind. Fear doesn't live in the body. We know, science has shown us that we have three brains. We have the brain, we have the heart brain, and we have the gut brain. Brain, analytical mind. It is a processor. We're not meant to lead from our brain. That'll be a whole other episode. That's not optimal leadership. That's not optimal creation. That's not optimal thinking, strategizing, etc. Our brain is a processor. Fear lives in the brain solely. Because once we get out of our analytical mind and into these other two heart centers, we have access to wisdom. We have access to guidance. We have access to information and intelligence that is floating all around us in energy form all the time. And the heart brain is actually the portal of reception for that information. So when we have access to all that information, we no longer have uncertainty, which is a big part of what created the fear in the first place. So by getting out of the analytical mind and tapping into the body is the fastest way out of survival and into creation. And it is one of the incredible skills of, in our certification program, what we call a visionary crisis leader, but as a leader who is leading through change. And that is going to bring us to the piece of this program that is a little bit different from what you may be used to. So I mentioned at the beginning that we're going to talk from an intellectual standpoint. We're going to understand things rationally. It's all going to make sense. And then we're going to experience it somatically. We're going to experience it so that we can teach our bodies what it feels like and how to move from survival and into creation. So, with that being said, I'm going to invite you to turn off all of your distractions, all of your pings, all of your things. If you're driving or if you are in a space where you're multitasking or you can't be fully present right now for whatever reason, especially for safety, you can come back to this later. It's going to be in podcast form. It's going to be on my LinkedIn page. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be in all places. But for those of you who can take a moment now to experience what I'm talking about so that you can truly begin right now in this moment, one, to grant yourself this serenity, the clarity, the peace that comes from being in creation and out of fear. And you can start to practice this and learn this as a skill that you can embody. So with that being said, I am going to start some music. And my invitation to you is to, again, close all distractions and just sit down into whatever space that you're in and take this moment for yourself. So maybe shutting down your eyes if that feels good to you. Taking some breaths. Feeling the seat beneath you. Feeling the floor beneath the seat. Knowing that it's got you. That you are safe. That you are held. And that you can gift yourself this moment for the next few moments just for you before you get into the rest of your day. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some halo active breathing, which is in through the nose and out through the mouth. And let's just do this together a few times, feeling the breath as it goes in through your nose and out through your mouth. As you're doing this, the invitation is to feel into your body, sinking in with every breath, sinking in to your body, out of your mind. Your mind gets to turn off right now. Your mind, gets to take a little pause while you go and access all of the wisdom, all of the calm, all of the serenity, all of the creation that you have access to within your body. Feeling the breath, knowing you are safe to breathe. And if you notice any parts within your body, maybe you feel an ache somewhere. Maybe your heart is racing a little bit. Maybe your mind is still going. The invitation here is to use your breath. Bring your awareness to that spot, to that part of you, and breathe into it. Be present with it. And just notice what you notice. Now I'm going to invite you to breathe in and out through your heart space. And maybe it might be helpful to bring your hand to your heart. And as you're breathing, Feel the breath as though it's flowing in and out through your heart space. Bring your awareness there. Notice what you notice. As you breathe in through your heart space, sinking deeper into your body, deeper into the calm, deeper into the stillness. Your heart is such a powerful resource, such a powerful tool for your leadership. As you're breathing in and out through your heart space and sinking into your body, the invitation here now, if it feels good to you, is to think or call back a moment in time, a memory, an experience that brought you joy, that brought you love, that brought you excitement and gratitude. Once you have that memory and what it felt like, the invitation is to feel that as you breathe in and out of your heart. And let the feeling of that memory, the visceral, emotional memory of that experience that feels so good, help you amplify the breath that's coming in and out of your heart space. And let that joy, let that love, let that gratitude, that excitement, that elatedness just vibrate through your entire being. And let's take a few moments to breathe and to sit with this feeling. How much more can you feel those feelings? How much more can you breathe them in and out through your heart and just allow them to soak you in how good they feel? How much more can you grant yourself that gift? Now coming back to your heart, coming back to your body, coming back to the present moment. And when you're ready, returning to the here and now. How do you feel? How do you feel? Do you notice that you felt one way going into the exercise and another way coming out? Even if just subtle. How did that land for you? How did that feel in your body? What we know to be true is change is all around us and change is a constant. As leaders who are here to lead through change, one of the first steps, one of the first things that we have to get so familiar with is understanding that change creates fear in our system because our ego doesn't like change because it's trying to keep us alive. And change can be chaos, it can be uncertainty, and it creates the fear. And the fear is not the problem. It's staying stuck in the fear or making decisions from fear-based place without realizing it, having that awareness. That is the risk for all the reasons that we talked about in this episode. So having that awareness is the first step. The second step is getting familiar with the signature of fear and how it is uniquely resonant, how it indicates what turns online for you when fear is activated and when you begin to be put into survival mode as a result. Is it a voice? Is it a sensation? Is it an urge? The homework that I want to leave you with this week, because this is about learning how to lead through change, not just learning about different tactics, but embodying the skills and putting them into practice so that we can rise into the opportunities that exist right now to help and to serve and to lead others through the change towards the vision of the better world or the better organization or the better experience or the better situation that you know that you are able to lead people towards. And so the first step in that is becoming familiar with the signature of fear. And so that is what I want to leave you with this week, as well as the understanding or the awareness that you have access to being in creation mode anytime you want, out of survival and into creation to lead from this incredible place, potent, resonant place. You have access to get there anytime you want, and it's by practicing getting out of the analytical, structured mind, because that is the only place that fear exists, and into your body, where you gain access to so much information, so much intelligence, so much wisdom, so much certainty that you can then choose to bring into your leadership and lead through change. When everybody else is uncertainty, you become clear. It begins with having this awareness. It begins with recognizing what fear feels like in your system and choosing and practicing going from survival into creation. That is the invitation this week. It's not to eliminate fear. It's to recognize it, regulate it, and lead beyond it. If what we explored today resonates with you and feels good in your system, then know that this is just the beginning. This is episode 1, guys. We're going to be here every single week. And if you're ready to go deeper, if this really, really speaks to you and you're like, I want to learn all this stuff right now and I want to be a leader who can lead through change, then the Crisis Ready certification is where leaders build that capacity, that embodiment to lead through change with clarity, with vision, and with resonance, and out of fear and constantly having your nervous system's baseline be in creation mode. So if that sounds interesting to you, then I invite you to get in touch with me, to DM me, go to the website, CrisisReadyInstitute.com, learn more about our certification program, reach out, we can talk about it. And otherwise, I will see you and hear and share this space with you again next week. You can follow me on LinkedIn and ring the little bell so that you get notified whenever we go live. You can set Tuesdays at 8 a.m. Eastern time in your calendar because I promise I will be here. I'm so excited for it. And if this conversation sparked something in you, I would love, love to hear what resonated or what didn't or what you need clarification on, because that's going to feed more of these episodes for you. I am here for you. All right. With that, I wish you a beautiful rest of your day in clarity, in coherence, and in creation. And I will see you next week.